Well, hey, welcome back to Sermon Cuts. Glad that you are joining us again. I'm Adam, here with Luke, and Sermon Cuts is just where we kind of look at what was preached on this past week, maybe look at some things we wanted to dive deeper into but didn't have as much time. I know one of them is Advent. We talked just a little bit about Advent, and so I know this episode we're going to talk more about that. Maybe dive in deeper with some things on Isaiah 11, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where we are heading. When we are recording this, it's cold outside, which, as we talked about in a previous episode,
Favorite
weather, right?
Not to say I'm not cold. Like, I do feel the cold. Like, people are like, "Oh, what's your favorite weather? How are you cold?" It's like I have nerves. Like, I'm still cold. I like it more than being hot.
Yeah.
That's
So when
it's a soapbox or something for me now. Defend myself.
When my parents went to the University of Kansas, there was, I guess, apparently a guy that lived there in Lawrence who had the nickname, I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was like Leatherman or something like that. But he actually couldn't feel the cold.
Wow.
So it would be like winter and he would walk around with, no shirt on.
Nice.
And
Not
so,
me, but yeah.
You're right, yeah. So apparently it is a real thing that you actually, some people can't feel the cold. But you feel it, you just don't mind it.
I just don't mind it. Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
It's
It's like on Sunday.
I drove here. I mean, it was 3 minutes, but I drove here without my heater on in my car. I mean, I got a coat on. Let's feel it for a while. So.
Yeah. I know on Sunday you walked in and you were like, "Hey, it's a beautiful morning out."
I got some like no, it's not like.
Yeah, I was like, "It's 20, dude." Like,
great.
I'm thankful for heat.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
for
I
sure.
also am thankful for heat. I just sleep with a fan on. Sleep with one blanket on, or if I can.
Yeah. Yeah. As I told somebody today, I said in 6 months I will be going. As much as I might complain about the cold, in 6 months I'll be going, "I wish it was colder." Right? 'Cause
Yeah. So we
it'll
get
be
to
really
winter. We get to winter, and I just don't complain about the cold because I know in the summer I'm only going to complain about the heat. So I can't be one of those fair weather people.
Fair enough. Well, this week we were taking a break from Acts for a while. We made it through the first 6 chapters, and we're going to pause for the month of December and maybe a little in January, and then we'll jump back into Acts. But we're kind of going to Advent. Advent is one of those interesting things. So depending on the Christian tradition that you are involved in or have experience with, you may or may not be familiar with Advent. What was that like for you? Like, did you have any experience with that season growing up?
I mean, not really. Like, the word came up every once in a while. I think Lego does this like Lego Advent calendar, and I would remember reading that. And I'm like, what in the world? What is Advent? And that's kind of how it always was. We just didn't really talk about it. It wasn't really a seasonal thing. I mean, we had like, I don't know, leading up to Christmas, like Christmas series or something that talks about, honestly, the hope, the peace, the joy, and the love, but we just didn't call it Advent. I think I grew up, well, I grew up in a tradition that was, maybe never said it, but lived it, the no creed but Christ. Like, we don't touch liturgy, we don't touch creeds, we don't touch any of those things. And Advent, I think for some, is just kind of too far Catholic, too far into the Catholic realm, and so we just didn't ever touch it, didn't talk about it. But then getting into school and having some professors that you wouldn't call them progressive, but they just thought differently about the world more than I did, and introduced things like Advent in chapel at Ozark, and it was just like, oh, this is kind of cool. We get to join, thousands, maybe millions of other Christians in the world, anticipating Christmas that's coming. Like, we know that we already had Jesus; He's already come, but now we get to just anticipate Him again, which is awesome. And it's just a cool, I don't know, way to approach the Christmas season, and makes it less about gifts and and drama and whatever else can come up and Christmas lights. Not that those things are bad. It's just this helps us kind of refocus and recenter. So
Yeah. Do you think, and I mean, you're not like the Ozark spokesperson
Nope.
or the Restoration
I don't
Movement
claim that at all.
or the Restoration Movement
Yeah.
spokesperson, right? But you did grow up in a Restoration Movement church. You attend and still attend, with Lincoln Seminary.
You don't have to say it with that tone. I'm just
uh,
kidding. Yes, I still. Sorry, that's
Right?
a joke.
Oh, you're still there.
Still
Luke,
in
are you
school.
ever gonna finish? No.
So my wife looks at you and says, "Still."
You're part of a Restoration Movement
Yeah.
school. Do you think, kind of with what you know, it appears from my perspective as one who didn't grow up in the Restoration Movement and then my degree is not even from a Restoration Movement school. Though I have been grafted in and hold to those principles for sure and beliefs. Do you think there has been a shift in how we look with our tradition as a whole, or at least pockets of groups in our tradition, how we look at things like Advent, like creed stuff, like tradition? For example, there's a rather large church in our movement that is, they're either currently doing it or they just finished up a sermon series going through the Apostles' Creed. And it was just interesting because I remember growing up, when I would hear of Restoration Movement, being an outsider, I think that would have shocked me, but it doesn't now. So I guess the question is, I'm getting long-winded here, but the question is, do you think that's a shift, or do you think that's just I had a faulty view of how the movement relates to those sorts of things?
No, I absolutely think it's a shift. I couldn't probably nail it down for you, like precisely when it started, when the shift kind of began, but just the awareness that the truth that we'll say creeds, for example. So the awareness of the truth that is held within a creed, like we don't require creedal statements. Like we don't have to say them, we don't have to memorize them, we don't have to do any of those things with them. But what they hold is truth. And so I think, speaking for myself and maybe some of those that I influence or that I have been influenced by, like we can take these valuable church history things that were written and debated and mulled over and written again, like just the process of making something, making sure that something is like legitimate and true, and then it's sat for a couple thousand years, 1,000 years or so. It's like, yeah, we can take that and we can take truth from that and we can preach, on that, concerning that kind of thing. Because I think it's foolish. I would say it's foolish of us to look at history, church history or not, whether it's my movement or not, and say, well, they didn't know anything or they weren't aware of the world the way we are today. Like, I think that's foolish, and it kind of cuts us off at the legs when we're trying to continue the message of Christ that has been preached for 2,000 years, whether it was Catholic, whether it was Protestant, Calvinist, whatever it is, over the course of the last 2,000 years, United Methodist Church, wherever we're at. Like, I think that being able to take part, and like I said, I think it's millions now. Like, the people that celebrate Advent, that they wore indigo or whatever the color was on Sunday, and they all heard a similar sermon or passage on hope and could all together pray and rejoice and worship and anticipate the coming Christ. And yes, we've acknowledged and established He's already come as a child, as a baby, but He will eventually come again and return for us. And so, not limiting ourselves to say like, well, only the ones that run with me, and only the ones that no creed but Christ, and only it's like, well, no, why? Let's not gatekeep this amazing thing, and yeah, so like even things like prayer books and Book of Common Prayer and like liturgical prayers, and there's just so much more that we have an opportunity to lean into and we get to.
Yeah, and there might be, I want to fully recognize the fact that like there might be people who would watch this who like this conversation that you and I are having is starting to make them really nervous. Because they are like very committed to the restoration movement, and they see the value in it, like I would say we see the value, right? Because at the end of the day, we're part of this tradition and we're not part of another one, precisely because we have deemed at some point that this would closely align or most closely align or however you want to put it with how I think things should be practiced, right? So I guess part of this is just the caveat of like, you know, in us saying this, we are not necessarily saying that like a creed or the church calendar is authoritative in and of itself. I've heard it said before that like a creed, for example, like let's just say the Apostles' Creed. The Apostles' Creed is kind of like the moon and the sun. The moon only shines at us because the sun reflects off of it and reflects, you know, and so that's all a creed is doing,
absolutely.
right? Even churches making statements of faith. You know, I think it's on Ozark's website. They're like, we've recognized no creed but Christ, but in order to have clarity, we're going to make a statement, and here it is.
Well, and you know, thinking through like the caution of like I don't want to jump on someone else's religion or you know Christian values or something that isn't my own, isn't you know Isaiah 11. Like I'm not Jewish, and I get to read Isaiah 11 and think about the coming Savior. That for them, when they heard this prophecy, was, I mean, this was truth for them. Jews, I'm saying Jews, but I'm not Jewish. But I get to come up alongside this and look at this thing that reflects Christ and say, I get to celebrate that too.
Yeah.
And I think not that a creed is Isaiah, but I'm not Jewish, so that's kind of the way I think about it. But
yeah. Well, I think you know you mentioned you're talking about, you know, okay, so for the season of Advent, which, you know, if somebody's watching this and just kind of a primer overview, the church calendar is divided into seasons. So Advent starts the church calendar. So the church year, according to the liturgical calendar, church calendar, actually just began this last Sunday. It's the beginning of a new year. It's Advent. Advent runs for the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas, and then we actually go to Christmas time after that. So it's actually, it actually is wrong. You can say Merry Christmas. It's okay, right? But technically, you're still in Advent until Christmas Day hits. But
this is even more leverage for me to say we don't celebrate Christmas too early. Advent, you know?
There you go.
I will not decorate till the week of. I want that. No, just kidding. We've already decorated.
But did you put up your tree before Thanksgiving?
No,
you
did not.
Okay.
We put it up last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We put ours up before Thanksgiving.
Wow.
But I am
like decorate and everything, or just put it up?
No, it's decorated and
Okay.
everything. I'm kind of a purist in that I'm like, no, like you got to wait till Thanksgiving, right? Wait, get that over. I also have small children in my house that love Christmas, and
you gotta
and
sacrifice
so
the things
you
you
know,
enjoy.
I'm such a victim on that. No, I am happy.
You outnumbered.
I am happy to break that tradition for my girls,
That's
right?
fun.
But anyway, no, you were so. That's kind of how it goes, and then we go into another period of time, and then we go into Lent, which is leading up to Easter, and then we have some more periods of time, right? So,
Which another example of something that you don't have to do, but
right.
I mean, I think it's how would I say this? Like, how does Paul say it? Like, not everything is beneficial, but everything's permissible.
No,
he's talking about
everything's
sin.
permissible, but not
other
everything's-
way.
Yeah,
He's talking about like sin, or you know, things that practices of ourselves and stuff. Like, Lent, Advent, all these, these two things especially are, maybe not beneficial for everybody, but they absolutely are for some, and they all point to Jesus. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Well, and I think, I grew up in a tradition, those more liturgical,
Yeah.
which somebody pushed back on me on that once. They actually said, well, we all have liturgy. It's just whether we acknowledge that we do or not. Even a quote unquote non-liturgical church has a liturgy that they follow. It's just kind of that unwritten, unspoken liturgy. We always do this. But growing up in a church that observed things like Advent and Lent and the church calendar, followed the readings, the year A, year B, year C, 3-year cycle.
Some of this I have no idea what you're talking about.
Really?
So, yeah,
we're going to do a whole episode on this. It's super fascinating. But growing up in a tradition like that, I see the value in it, but I don't know if 20 years ago I could have expressed to you the value. To me, it felt like empty ritual. And I think that's the caution, right, is that these things are good, but they can become meaningless if we're not careful. And it wasn't until I left that tradition, got involved in the Restoration Movement tradition, that I really kind of realized how valuable that was. One of the reasons being something you said earlier, was like this past Sunday, I knew there were followers of Jesus gathered together in local churches talking about the same thing, the hope we have in Christ, talking about some of the similar themes, maybe some even talking about similar passages of Scripture, right? And thinking about hope specifically was the topic. When I was thinking about that, I was thinking about even that gives me hope to know that this is not just about my little group here. This is actually a worldwide, global movement of people who have hope, who are celebrating the coming or the advent of Jesus, both his first coming and his second coming as well, right? And so I don't know. I think it's one of those things that there's so many good things about it, that I'm going to continue to celebrate it.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue to incorporate it into what I do personally, what we do as a family, and where I can, what we do as a church family, for sure. So, you think about Advent, you think about, and if somebody was getting hung up on this Advent, I would say the month leading up to Christmas, right? When you think about it, the things that we talk about, how do you think that invites us to slow down and to reflect? And I mean, I'm not going to say that it's probably always been needed, but especially I look around our culture today, and I would say it's definitely needed. How do you think Advent just invites us to slow down?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we talked about it some Sunday, we live in a world that is weary, right? We're just we're worn out. And I think there's kind of a trend. I'm not a metrics guy necessarily, but you can kind of just perception around you and social media. There's a trend. People are tired of I wouldn't say fake, but the image movement, the putting your best face on all the time, always happy, always, and it's for some that is just that skyrockets at Christmas season. I have to look put together, my house has to look decorated. If there's not a tree in my window, my neighbors will see and they'll know I'm not put together. It's and that's just side comments that just reveal a larger issue. And Advent reminds us that Christmas is not about trees. It's not about decorating. It's not about the best present, the best meal, the best feelings, the warmest drink. Like it's just the best movie. Like all of those things are awesome in their own right. Like you get to enjoy those things. But if you get so wrapped up in that, which you could call it, I don't know, the materialism of Christmas, maybe. Like that sounds really negative, and there are good things in it. But you could call it the materialism of Christmas, and that's just a microcosm of your year, and it takes place between Thanksgiving and January 1st, you could say. But we do it all year round for everything else. Like you could just ask someone, what are you worried about right now? And it's like either a holiday, it's something big in their life, it's some season of life that they're in that just seems to be a cyclical thing that just keeps coming back, and we just get overwhelmed. And so having an intentional time to slow down and to anticipate and to expect and to meditate with millions of other Christians on the truth of the gospel, the truth of Jesus. I mean, we're going to wake up, it's going to be December 24th. Like, oh my gosh, where'd the time go? And we know exactly where it went, right? You know, but taking the time to, I mean, reflection's huge. Reflection requires you to slow down. And this time of year, I think, is just I'm kind of like just rambling, but I think it's a perfect opportunity just to slow down and to not get caught up in the headache sometimes it is this time of year.
So kind of making a shift into talking about hope and Isaiah 11 specifically. How would you define to someone in kind of fairly simple terms the difference between biblical hope and optimism? Because I think sometimes we use that word hope in ways that when we talk about hope during Advent, we might be like, oh, it's wishful thinking, right? What would...
Yeah, so my go-to, I think, for describing biblical hope is always, I wrote an exegetical in college, first ever big paper on 1 Thessalonians 4:13 through 18, which talks about we don't weep like those who don't have hope. And so I did a lot of study and research on the word hope and kind of what it meant, and essentially what Paul was saying in this passage or in that passage was that it's not optimism. It's not like, well, we hope to see them again. It's like, no, we know we'll see them again. So he calls it sleeping. They've just fallen asleep. They're not even dead because we know we will see them again. And I think optimism kind of pulls you into a headspace of kind of wishful thinking, like, well, if I just like send it positive vibes and energy and that kind of stuff, maybe things will work out for me. And biblical hope doesn't work that way. It is rooted in truth and guarantee. Like it's not we hope that Christ will come back. It's like, well, no, we know he'll come back. And Isaiah 11, like you preached on Sunday, the Israelites were hurting. I mean, they were wrecked, and they were ready for salvation out of that, redemption away from that. And God sends Isaiah, and Isaiah has the prophecy, and we read about it in Isaiah 11, and you kind of you understand that like when God promises something, it's not let's optimistically hope in it. It's like, no, it's going to happen. So having the hope that it will happen, biblical hope is trusting in the truth that it is going to happen. Maybe it won't happen in my lifetime, but it's nice to think that way, like. So anyways, does that answer your question?
No, it does. It does. And I think like, I think when I think about hope and I think about like that Isaiah 11 passage, I think one of the things that I'm reminded of is that like the hope that I have because of Christ is not rooted in circumstances. It's not rooted in what's going on around me. It's rooted in God's character.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it just popped into my mind. Shane Wood has a video series on Revelation, on the next level stuff, and he's talking about the saints who are there when it talks about the saints that are that are under your altar, and they're like, "How long, O Lord?" And Shane's summary of it is basically like, God says, "Here's a T-shirt. Wait a while," they're like, "Oh, how long, O Lord?" And God's like, "Just wait, just wait, just wait." But it's like that, or Isaiah 11, or like any of these things. It's a reminder to me that like hope doesn't depend on my circumstances, and I think that's one of the things that the kind of tension of Advent specifically is we celebrate this first coming of Christ, right? This thing that, like, if we put ourselves in the shoes of Isaiah 11, part of Isaiah 11, if we put ourselves in their shoes, they were longing for this coming Messiah. The Messiah has now come. So in one sense, we've realized some of that hope.
Yeah.
So we sit between that and his second coming. So some of the things like we are still hoping for, we are still longing for. And so I think looking back on those things in Isaiah 11, going, no, this is the promise of God, and this is what happened, then helps me to look forward and say, okay, this is the promise of God, and I know this will happen because hope is rooted in God's character.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, on Tuesday, not Isaiah, but we finished up our series in our small group on Ruth. And one of the questions at the end of Ruth, Ruth doesn't have any questions in it, but one of the discussion questions around the passage of Ruth said, look to Scripture and point out your favorite Old Testament story that reminds you of the redemption that Christ eventually brought us. And, they're just kind of spitballing and, just book of Noah, or story of Noah, story of Abraham, story of David, there's story of Moses, just all the things that they see this picture of Christ, even though he hadn't come yet because Moses happened, But anyways, I think you can do the same thing with hope, and even more so. Like we understand hope through God's character because we have a book that tells us what God's character is. And it's not just a book, it's not a fictional story, it's a historical summary and narrative of who God is. And you see that way back with Abraham, who, they were promised a son and then had to wait and had to wait and had to wait and had to wait. And we sometimes have to wait for a cheeseburger and get uncomfortable and unhappy and annoyed. Abraham had to wait, I don't know how many years it was, I don't have it memorized, but quite a while to have a son, but didn't lose hope the entire time. I mean, maybe it was tested, but...
I mean, and he even tried to take it into his own hands, so to speak, and God's like, no, like, I told you I'm going to do this.
And even fast forward a couple hundred years to the nation of Egypt, and the Israelites are stranded in Egypt. But we know, we just call them the Israelites. Why do we call them that? Because those are the descendants of Abraham. And the hope that his I don't know what you call it, the covenant he made with God, would result in his people being, more numerous than stars in the sky, that kind of thing. It's like you look at Egypt for 400 years, and they just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And it's like, well, that promise was fulfilled right here, and you see it, and yet God wasn't done. Then the Exodus happens, and then you just... over and over, what's the word? Recapitulation, just of hope, just over and over and over again, because that's God's character. And though they were stuck as slaves in Egypt, their circumstances said, we are not going to be saved. God has left us, he has abandoned us, but his character overcame their circumstances. And I think that's Advent. Like, God's character just overcomes the things that we are dealing with over and over and over again. And Advent is a time to look to that and honestly just always be reminded of it, that kind of thing. So,
what are some counterfeit hopes? That some things that it look shiny, right? But they don't actually offer what we think they offer.
Well, shiny isn't really the way they look anymore, but our money, I guess the plastic card is sometimes shiny if you hold it light the right way. But I think this time of year especially, and you kind of hit on it too with your the Advent conspiracy. Like we just tend to put all of our money on money, like all of our hope on money. And we're like, well, if I just have enough money at the end of the year and I can buy the right amount of gifts and I can receive exactly the thing that I want, then I will be satisfied. And 365 days later, it's the exact same story. So I think money is a big false hope that we tend to. Do you have one that you've been thinking of?
Money. I mean, one of the big ones. Like I think I'm trying to think ones that would specifically be there around this time of year. I think like family can be one, and that in some ways that almost becomes like a catch-all, right? But it's one of those things, like it's a good thing God has given that to us, but there's also a degree where, like, if I'm not careful, I think especially around this time of year, we can put all of our hope in that, right? And then when somebody lets us down, when we don't have that, when things get stripped away, I know for a lot of people this time of year is a rough season, because there was so much hope placed in family, and now we don't have that to experience in the same way, right? And so I think that can be one. Another one I think of is, I mean, it's not specific to this time of year, but politics. I mean, that we could do a whole sermon
Series,
cuts
the whole
thing
series
on
on
that,
it, yeah.
right? But I heard it expressed here just recently. Somebody said, for every mile of road, there's 2 miles of ditches. And their point was, they said, sometimes we only talk about the one ditch, right? Sometimes what ends up happening is, in order to avoid that ditch, we swing too far and we end up in the other ditch. So it's like you have to recognize both. And I think when it comes to politics, we can do that, in an attempt to, I'll attempt to be as non committal as I can here, right? But keep it as general as I can. But in an attempt to avoid one side of the political aisle, because we would say, oh well, this, and this, and that side don't line up with biblical worldview. We swing to the other side, not realizing that there's also a ditch on that side of the road too that we have to watch out for, right? And so I think we can put our hope there if we're not careful. Any others, like offhand, that you can think of?
Not really. It's kind of just the word idol just keeps popping in my head, and that's what we're talking about. And, it's easy to call money an idol. It's easy to call politics an idol. It's not so easy to call family an idol, or friends, or the celebration, or I think even pushing too strongly with the songs that we sing, or the sermons that we preach, the sermon series that we go through, that trying to increase numbers for Christmas Day, or that kind of stuff. Like if we can get this little depiction of heaven right here in this little church in Missouri, then that can give us a picture of hope. But we don't need to create a picture of hope here. We already have one, and it's right here in the text, right? And I think that sometimes as a church we can get so, and I say as pastors, we can get really narrow visioned into let's make this a place where people have hope because they might not otherwise in other places. And it's like, well, this happens outside of the church too. This hope that Christ has brought, Advent, whatever we want to call it, the anticipation for that happens outside of these walls that we've kind of built up around us. And Not negatively, it's just that's how we've done it. And
Is it kind of like we want to point people to the hope of the world, but in the process, we don't want them to think that our church is the hope of the world.
yeah, yeah.
Oh man, like this is an amazing church, right? Like I love this place.
Yeah.
This is awesome because we do this and this and this and all these sorts of things. And it's like, no, actually, like
free communion.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's like Jesus is the hope.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
we're not.
Yeah.
Like I mess things up all the time and give people tons of reasons not to be
Yeah.
hopeful.
well, not to bring up your metaphor from earlier, but like we're just the moon. We're just reflecting the hope of Christ. We're just reflecting the truth of Christ. And I think it's that's why I was a little cautious with the way I said it, but it's important to make sure that we aren't placing ourselves as the hope. Even though I'm, overjoyed to be able to celebrate and anticipate Christmas with every Christian and non-Christian that walks through our door, and I want to provide a space of uplift and joy and hope. But I never want to say, look, it's because of me or it's because of you. It's like I just want to point past me, to who it truly is about, to reflect the light back to who the light is, that kind of thing. So. Yeah, that's probably the one that I'm like, I'll say it, but it might have a little bit of a hesitancy to it. But
Yeah. Well, and I just think in general, the hope we place and where we trying to find our fulfillment, right? So like, it's the picture perfect Hallmark movie, Hallmark Christmas
I don't
movie.
like Hallmark movies.
I don't either. They all have like all 478 of them have the exact same plot.
They do.
It's like I'd love to be a writer for them.
Yeah.
By the way, like
Make a lot of money. You're doing the same thing over
yeah,
and over
same
and over
thing
again.
over and over and over again.
Pretty sure there's a quote about insanity in there somewhere.
Repeating the same thing over and over again. The argument could be made that you and I, with what we do, are basically just saying the same thing over and over again in different words. So we're just kind of like a Hallmark movie. Not really, not quite. But we have that view of like, oh, everything has to be perfect, right? And we place all our hope in that, and we forget.
And honestly, like one of the best Sundays that I've had in my brief time at Hume was the Sunday when we had a baptism right in the middle of the service, and we had planned everything and prepared everything, and you took the it wasn't a script, but basically the order of service, and you just tore it up because we're like, we're off track here, and that's okay. And that's been my favorite Sunday because
that's cool.
We allowed ourselves to the rigidity, is that how you say it?
Yeah.
The rigidity, the what'd you call it? Ritualistic, the liturgical thing that we did. We allowed ourselves to break away from that. And yeah. So, anyways,
that was and I think that's good. And that one of the that Sunday reminded me, especially since we're talking about hope now, and I'm reflecting on that. That Sunday reminded me that like my hope is not in anything that I do.
Yeah.
It's in that. Yeah. I remember standing there and just being like, I'm just gonna tear up this order because like it didn't matter,
So
right?
whoever was working the booth in the back was like, "Do you have another order of service for me?" He keeps taking mine, and I'm like, "I think he just ripped it up." So I think we're just gonna keep rolling the way we know.
Just go with it.
It was
Right.
It was a good day. Honestly, it was a
man.
good day. It
was. Well, kind of to wrap this all up, I guess. No Christmas pun intended there, but how do we practically do this? Like, what are some practices that you would say we could incorporate that would maybe help us to be a little more intentional about, this in general, more intentional about this time leading up to Christmas Day, but maybe also specifically with hope?
Well, we mentioned the handful of things that we call like counterfeit hope a little bit. The message there is not to like dump all your money and forget your family and don't go to church. Like that's not the message. I think here practically take that idol, take whatever it is that causes you to have hope in it, falsely, and kind of turn that back around. And so I'd say like if money is at this time of year, if you place your counterfeit hope in money, then turn around and just give away more money. Like not specifically in that way, but like be more intentional with your money, like with your giving, with your, what do you call that? Benevolence or
Generosity.
generosity. That's what I'm looking for. Yes, like be more generous. Like be more willing to pay for somebody's drink or pay for the person behind you in the drive-through or buy some gifts to give away for people that you wouldn't typically. Or if it's family, if family drama always is a thing every single year, invite somebody into that maybe can help balance it out. Invite a friend off the street who you know maybe doesn't have a place to go this year for Christmas or something like that. Like this isn't just like the 3 steps to having hope in the Christmas season, but I think there's some value in breaking the ritual a little bit as we talk about rituals, right? Like including people, things, values into this season, because that's exactly what Jesus did. Like he came in and he just broke the social norms. And so, honestly, like I was talking to my wife a week ago. There's always a guy that we invited to Christmas every year because he didn't really have anywhere else to go. And I was like really bummed this year. He passed away this year. And I was like, I'm like bummed because I don't get to invite him anymore. But I'm also like, it's weird to be bummed because I know he's with Jesus right now, or he's better off than I am right now because he's not in pain, he's not suffering. But it's like stinks that I won't have his presence at Christmas this year. It's like that just happened one year. I was like, hey man, you don't have any family. Do you want to come and be a part of mine for a day? And it shifted the way that I approached Christmas just a tiny bit. And to the point now, it's like, well, it might feel a little empty this year without him, kind of thing. And so I ramble a lot, I guess, with this, but I would say like just the things that you do already, just do them differently, just a little differently. Just put a little twist on them that's more generous, more hope filled, more Christ filled.
So there's some ways. I mean, to kind of say it, the same thing in another way. There's some things that we don't even have to like look. We don't even have to try that hard to find something. We just need to shift why we do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like realign why we do those things.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think one of the practices is this is gonna sound like a real preacher thing to say, right? But like
You're a preacher.
it's what I do. It's what I do. Focusing on Scripture, like my hope isn't in my circumstances. My hope is in God's character. And so one of the things that will anchor us in hope rather than something else, anxiety or all these other things, something that will root me in that hope is simply the promises of God that have been revealed in Scripture, the ones that I can look back on. Like in Isaiah 11, I can look and say, he promised this and it happened, will lead me to remember that these things that he has promised that have not yet happened yet, the lion and the lamb laying down together, the kid playing over the cobra pit, which is like a totally,
your favorite story.
totally bonkers story, right? I'm like, what is happening with that's got to be Jesus because that's never happening, right? I know that's a picture of the type of peace that will be presented, which I don't want to talk about peace because that's next week, right? Spoiler alert there. Yeah. So tune in next week and we will talk about peace. But anyway, you got anything more on hope? Last word?
Last word. just make sure you're reading our devotions that we spent so much time writing.
There you
That's
go.
another good practice.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. Well, and not just us, right?
Yeah,
But,
well, absolutely.
people in our.
You can disregard the one I wrote if you want to, and just read the other ones.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'd take it. But no, you can get that. We'll put a link in the description there, maybe to the app and how to
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
You can view those through the app, and
Devotional time.
yeah, it'd be good. So anyway, thanks for watching us. Thanks for listening. We hope that this was helpful. And if it was, leave us a comment and let us know how it was. Share this with somebody who you think it might encourage. And we will see you next week. Talk about peace.